think I'm on now. So, all right, hello. I think I'm on. Good, so people are saying hi on Discord, so good to see you all, hello. And got a couple people here in person too as well. So hope you all are doing okay. I am personally still a little distracted this week, but I'm doing a lot better. So things are moving in a certain direction, and that's good. Nationally, we're getting some resolution and some answers, so that's the main thing that I'm feeling a little bit better about. But the thing I wanted to talk about today is, of course, your projects and how those are going, and specifically, I want to continue looking a little bit at the idea of interactivity and design. And you all have hopefully completed or are in the process of completing a node 4, which was a much reduced node compared to the first 3, but the idea is the same, where there's a bit of learning and a bit of application. So you are hopefully able to apply what you've learned, and either from my talking about it or from the webpage there, about heuristics for user interface design. And I'm really interested to see how you approach this, because I gave it to you as pretty open-ended in the sense that you're picking the platform. Sorry, I'm trying to shrink the page, not move it. There we go. That hopefully you were able to find something like what you're trying to create. But that said, I think some of you probably faced some interesting, hopefully, challenges in trying to figure out how to fill it out. Especially, I think people doing podcasts probably had to get a little creative, and so I'm interested to see how you did that. So I do want to spend a little time talking about some of those, and if there is a particular thing, like I don't want to pull up anybody's specific worksheet unless I have your permission. So I may ask a couple of you, but if not, just in general, what I could do is just like look at a specific kind of thing and kind of work through it so you can see my thought process in working through it, and that might be helpful. So was there a particular kind of thing that you struggled with in terms of filling out the worksheet? Like you weren't sure how to apply the ideas there to the thing you were studying? Like how did you all do?
The error one was a little hard because it was like make sure that if there are errors, the user understands them.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing interactive games and I couldn't make it do any errors. So.
Okay. So if you're on the stream, so the question was about the error. So like if you are, let me go ahead and pull up a copy of the worksheet here. So you're talking about like number 5, error prevention. Yeah. So I mean that's like so the question was how to notice that or observe it in the kind of thing you're working on. And I think really just like if you didn't see any errors, that's evidence that they did it right. So like you could just simply say there were no errors, or at least you weren't able to find them, and that's a good thing that they were designed not to. That said, if it's a website, there is general information you can find out about errors on the web, and so if you're making any kind of like even a web game, those errors might be that's what you would run into if you didn't code it right or something went wrong, I guess. So there is something you could learn about there in that case, but I think just the not seeing it in the artifact that you looked at is just that's good enough. Just kind of noting that there were no errors, or if there were errors, they failed silently, so you didn't see the error message, which is a good thing. Like on the web, like just in general web stuff, there's a whole series of HTTP error codes, and you've seen some of these, I'm sure. Like 404 is the pretty well-known one. 404 means page not found. These are ways where, like, if your computer is trying to connect to a web page or a web server, that web server can respond with different numeric codes to let the requesting computer know what's going on. So if everything's fine, it just returns 200 as the number. It says like everything's fine, and then it just proceeds. So you never see the 200. It's just that's what happens between the two, and then it proceeds to the next request and then processes the rest of the page. 404 means page not found. 403 means permission denied. 500 means internal server error. I mean, these are things that you hopefully won't see, but you might see. And this, especially if you're building a website, when you're working on a domain, you might accidentally do something and change something on your website. It might end up with that kind of thing. There is actually I think the history of this is pretty interesting, honestly. I'm not going to go into it now, but I think there's a lot of pretty interesting things you can find out in the history of how this stuff came to be, because like this is something, the web is so ingrained, we almost take it for granted as this sort of monolith that's always been here, but it hasn't. It's been a thing that was constructed and negotiated and produced as a series of compromises and conversations and there's odd little quirks in that history. It's pretty interesting to me, but it's hopefully, again, you won't ever see many of these errors if you're making your own thing, but yeah, they are there. So yeah, errors, and that's, like my basic request with this worksheet is like do your best. I mean, you don't have to dig into error codes to explain them. Just kind of what are you observing when you work with it. So not observing anything is good in that case. That was a long way of saying that, but yeah. Now, was there a particular? So it was a web game, and in your case, Sally. DJ, what were you looking at? Oh yeah. So did you find any errors there?
The only kind of error thing is that you close out the game without saving. And I think the game that I looked up did have an autosave feature.
Okay,
To
yeah.
prevent that from happening.
Great, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's something that hopefully the platform will do automatically, but if not, you either have to program that in, or as a designer, you might actually want that for some reason. Like you might want to prevent people from saving. Like there are some games I can think of that are designed that way on purpose, but that's an explicit exception to the expectation, the norm that you would expect that things are auto-saved. So yeah, so that would be an example of maybe poor usability if there is no autosave. Like if there is no autosave and there's no reason for there not to be, then you might consider that a poor design or a missing part of their design. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question.
It was either autosave or there was a save button at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It was clear as day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And I think they tell you before you close out, do you want to save?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that's how that's the aspect of their interface that they're using to try to solve that problem or to address that usability heuristic the way that Jacob Nielsen has laid it out. So yeah, and those of you on the stream especially too, like if you have any, I'm curious what your obstacles were in filling this out. So if there was a particular kind of thing, and I think I will just do a podcast, go break down a way that you might think about usability in terms of a podcast, just as an example, because I think there are several of you doing podcasts, and you might have struggled a bit with this worksheet. I don't know. But I would love to request if you have any requested kind of thing. By the way, the other one too is several of you also did videos, and let's see, Ginger Snaps. I don't know if you're watching right now. You're online, but I don't know if you're actually watching now. You usually watch the other one, but I think you didn't actually link to the video, but I think I know the video you're talking about, and I think I have watched it. So let me show you that one actually, because that's a good one to talk about. Yeah, as you're looking at all my dumb YouTube recommendations. Okay, so you just called it How to Paint Cabinets. And again, I don't know actually, Ginger Snaps, if you're watching, but this is a video I had watched recently. And so I kind of recognized it as you were describing it. But even the title of it is the same. And it is the first result for How to Paint Cabinets. It does have quite a few reviews. Views on it. So up 4 million, which is that's a lot for a DIY video. Also, this is a video that does a lot actually with usability. This video, I was interested in it because we were thinking about doing some work on our kitchen, and I found this video and I was telling my wife, hey, we could do this, watch this video. And she was like, no, look at this. And if you look at the comments, a lot of the comments are kind of dunking on this video and saying they're making it look so easy, but it is actually enormously difficult. It's an interesting video. This one over here, this is the one I was like, I could do this. I can rent a paint sprayer, right? Like these people did, I guess. But anyway, this one it's interesting. These are 2 videos put out by Lowe's about how to do this, and they have entirely different approaches to doing this, to actually painting your kitchen. Look what they're doing with their suits on. Anyway, so what's kind of interesting here is they've actually labeled the steps and provided timestamp links in the description to specific parts of this. And this is a great idea. I think I should do this with my instructional videos that I create. I think this is a really useful thing. And you see it a lot, I listen to music a lot on YouTube, and so the albums will have timestamps for the different songs, and so you click on the one you want to listen to. But I think this is a great use of that as well, to kind of break it down step by step, because often in a DIY process, you get halfway into it and then you're like, what am I doing? And you get lost. And so you need to jump to that specific bit of information. So this is a way that they're able to make that much more accessible. So, okay, so let's kind of break it down. And I'll go ahead and, well, I guess I could look at Aaron's, but I'll just kind of comment on these because Aaron's already done it, but the visibility of system status, like we know it's working because we're not seeing an error message, and that tells us that YouTube is working. We're online, we can see it. We can also see where we are in it by the playhead. This is giving us that point of view there that we can jump to kind of where we are as far as the progress. We can also see progress down here. So in terms of the usability question here about status, if we think of the video as the system, which is a little bit of an odd way of thinking of it perhaps, the platform here is providing the playhead, so we can skip to that particular timestamp. The creator is providing this structure here, the chapter structure that lets us navigate it this way. And so we can keep track of our status in relation to the video in two different ways. The platform and the creator have both done work here to help us understand and work with this video. So it's not just watching it, but actually working with and using it. So yeah, a match between the system and the real world. This one's kind of interesting and maybe abstract, but like the play button to me is the biggest match between the real world design choice on YouTube. So it looks like the play button on a VCR, and I know that no one has VCRs anymore, but that's a iconography that YouTube is inheriting from that. Even the shape of the YouTube icon, that sort of rounded edge thing, is meant to look like an old-fashioned TV. And I say old-fashioned, like these things, I mean, you can still buy them. I mean, I'll take it back. You can't buy new ones. No one's making CRT TVs anymore. But I have several. If you're looking for one, I have a bunch that I've kind of hoarded. So it's that rounded look, and screens don't look that way anymore. But YouTube has made it look that way, so it looks familiar and it looks like the kind of thing that we are used to clicking on. And I don't know the origin of that right pointing triangle as the play button, actually, but it predates the YouTube, obviously. So YouTube is using an icon that we already know how to use. That's the referencing the match between the system and the real world. And it's also a bit of recognition and recall, right? You could put it there as well. User control and freedom, obviously we have the ability to click in and out, jump around to different points. The chapter structure supports that, just like the playhead structure supports that. But that's, again, both the platform and the creator. And yeah, I don't know. I think the rest of these are pretty straightforward. But let me see. Yeah, I don't know. So on Discord, actually, I don't have my Twitch chat pulled up, but if anyone has chatted there, I can't see it. So if you are watching online in Discord, that's where you should leave me a message if you have anything to say or request as far as breaking down the usability of it. Okay, so let me get a drink there. Okay. So let me break down a podcast because I think that'll be helpful. It's a different kind of thing, and I hope this will work. Actually, I need to get a marker. All right, just getting some markers here in case I need those. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at a podcast. Now, the thing with podcasts is there are many different platforms possibly for accessing and using a specific podcast. So I'll show you one. I'm going to actually, let me see. I think you can probably see that. I'll just take a chance and hope that I don't get any weird push notifications while I'm showing you this. But this is my phone, and this is how I access a lot of podcasts. And it's upside down. And also very small, but I use the Google Podcast Reader. I find it really convenient. And I have subscribed to a bunch of podcasts, so whenever there's a new episode, they pop up, and then I can play it, and then I can see the ones that I haven't played yet. I can see kind of how far along I am in a recent one. In fact, let me see. Let me make this bigger on the stream so you can see it. Let me see. I'm just going to drop this here. Drop this here. All the way up. Where's that go? All the way up. There we go. And yeah, there we go. So there's my phone. I will move it over here so you don't see my unlock pattern. And there we go. Let's see if we can get that to focus. There it goes, finally. Okay. So it's still a little blurry. Hopefully you can kind of see it. yeah, so you see the most recent episodes, or the different podcasts I follow have square icons up here. There's the ones I'm listening to. This one, by the way, the most recent episode of 99% Invisible is all about GeoCities, so I definitely think you should listen to it. It was really interesting. It would have been great to assign it for you all to listen to a few weeks ago when we were talking about GeoCities, but it was just published like yesterday. So here's a podcast I follow, Old Gods of Appalachia. It's a storytelling podcast, horror fiction. I like it. I think it's probably not for everyone, but I like it. It's horror fiction, but it's not super gross. But sometimes it is, and I don't think that's not what I like in general. I like the creepy atmospheric stuff of it, but it's fine. So anyway, like this is when I think about usability. In some ways, I'm talking about the usability of Google Podcasts, like the Google Podcast app, which is what I'm using here. But it does some things to support the things that I'm interested in for this. So the visibility of the system status, I can see if it's playing or not because of how this play button is. It's in play position as opposed to pause position. So when I'm listening, it turns into a pause button. It changes its state based on whatever status it's in. And I can see where I am in the episode by the play bar. Again, that play button is inherited from physical play buttons like on tape players and VHS, VCRs, right? So that's something that exists. In terms of consistency, every podcast looks the same, right? So here I could look at Snap Judgment, same layout, Reply All, same layout. Everything is the same. Each podcast is kind of put into the container of Google Podcast pretty easily, and it works fine. Yeah, so that's probably good enough. But let's take a look at other versions of the same content. And let me just go ahead and hide the .cam. So if you are interested in it, like Old Gods of Appalachia has a website. And so you can also access the podcast this way, but notice how it's obviously very different. They designed this to look specific to the branding and to the content. Nice and creepy looking, dark design. But you can actually just listen to it right here. I don't know this exact platform, what this is, Acast, I guess. I don't really know what that is, but this is a little player and I can listen to it in here. And a lot of the same things are referenced, but through the specific iconography of this platform hosted in this website. I think you can listen to it on Stitcher. Yeah, lots of different platforms, right? I'm interested, by the way, for those of you making podcasts, to see, a lot of you are using Anchor, I think, and I'm kind of curious to see how that works as far as getting your content out to different platforms. So look forward to seeing how that works for you all. One of the things that we kind of can't do with this without actually listening to the episode is think about how the creators within the content of the podcast are doing things in terms of their planning and their design, their sound design, to help usability, like what we could call usability here. And what they do on this one is, let's see, they have transcripts. So I don't think they have transcripts on their website. Let's take a look at this one. If they do, it's not here, yeah. So that is a kind of a missing point in their usability. So that's something that if they had transcripts, that would increase the usability of their podcasts. And they've chosen not to have podcasts. I think they share them in their Discord server, but that's not the same as putting it out here and not something you can access within the podcast app. Other websites do that. Other podcast websites do have transcripts on their website. Like I think This American Life does, for example. So that's the kind of thing that increases that usability. But these are all just different strategies you can use. Within Old Gods of Appalachia, what they usually do is each episode starts with a cold open, and then like a brief kind of preview of the story, and then there's the intro music, and then the host kind of comes on and says, "Hey, this is this new episode," and then the episode starts telling the story, and then it proceeds from there. Then it always ends the same way, and that reference, that repetition, that structure, that gives you a sense of familiarity as a listener. You kind of know where you are within the episode, and you can jump around if you need to or if you miss something. Other more kind of journalistic podcasts will often do like a menu almost at the beginning. They'll say, we're going to talk about this story first, and then this story, and then this other story. And then so you can actually jump ahead to the point that you want to listen to if there's only one part of it that you're interested in. So those are Yeah, kind of quick, but that's the idea that podcasts, even though the visual part of it is probably something you're not going to be designing, the audio is something you are designing. And as you think about different parts of different platforms to put it on, those platforms have different considerations in terms of usability. So if one of these is really important to you, like the transcript, then make sure you host it with a platform that supports transcripts, or host it yourself. Like, you could always put this on your own domain, of course. And if you do that, then certainly you could include podcasts or whatever else you want. Okay, has there been any questions coming in? Yeah, still nothing. Are you all still out there watching? Is anyone still watching? I can see you all on there, but I can't tell if you all are chatting or not. Okay, so I want to give you a thought. The separation between platform and creator is pretty abstract, and I don't know if any of you. Good, thanks, Alex and Crystal. Yeah, so in terms of getting it right and deciding for sure which is which, it's not super important, except that I want you to think about it. And so was there any part of your usability worksheet that you prepared that you weren't sure about in terms of which column to put it in? And I'm posing that question to anyone watching the stream or anyone here. Was there any determining between what the platform takes care of versus what the creator was responsible for? Was that pretty easy to figure out, or yes? No? Okay, good. Well, Sally, I haven't looked at your worksheet yet, but can I pull up the website or thing that you looked at and kind of talk through it a little bit? I had it up a second ago, I think, but I lost it. Well, just tell me, what was the website, the game? Oh, okay. Oops. Yeah, my keyboard's doing the thing again. So, oh, there it goes. It always does that. It saves them all up and then blasts them out. So iCivics, is it .org? Okay. Was it a website or an app that you looked at? Okay, cool.
And then I did the represent me, it's about secure, so you can pretty much like anything. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is cool. Obviously, topical. Maybe it's here. Yeah. Win the White House, executive command. This is great. Which one was it?
It's called Represent Me.
Represent me. Is it this one? WebQuest?
Yeah, I guess that's it. I don't have to download.
Yeah, this looks like it
That's a little
might be like a lesson plan or something.
Yeah.
Let's see.
When I clicked on the website, when I found it, it looked different. I can, what worksheet though?
Okay, yeah, maybe. Let me just pull up what you submitted. Yeah, there we go.
I want to say they didn't know how to fill out the creative box for number 7.
Okay, great. So I will take a look. Thank you.
You need to do the Flash player.
Yeah, I can do that. So number 7 is flexibility and efficiency of use. Okay, yeah, so I can probably talk about that. Who was that? So Alex, what was your thing you were analyzing? Tell me what kind of thing you were analyzing, and I'll see if I can answer that. But this one is a bit more, flexibility and efficiency of use is more, I guess, generic, I guess. Is it something that can be used in different ways and easily? That's the issue. A podcast, yeah. Yeah, flexibility. So I think, like I was talking about a minute ago, if the podcast has a transcript that supports different kinds of use. So that would let you read it later, for example, or find a specific quote from it, or even find a timestamp of a particular segment. That's something that, as a creator, you could provide the transcript. And so if that's the case, then that would definitely go under the creator column. If the platform automatically creates a transcript like YouTube does, then that might go under there. If that's if you agree that having a transcript increases flexibility and efficiency of use, I certainly think it does. That's the main one that occurs to me for podcasts. But yeah, certain platforms will automatically include a transcript. Some will not. Most won't actually. So that would be something that either they're not doing or that the creator, can't do or whatever. So, and just to say, I mean, all these 10 items here, you might have to say they're just not doing it. Like they might be doing a bad job at it, or it's just not practical or whatever. But it's certainly, there is an opportunity, I think, for every one of these to be addressed by just about anything. It's just they may or may not be doing it well. So that's kind of up to you. But hopefully that makes sense. Let me take a look at this website here. Oh yeah, okay. Wait, what? How did I get here? This one, here we are. And yes, we know. Okay. Get the full iCivics experience. No thanks. Executed by Filament Games. Interesting. Okay. Represent me. I'm a legislator seeking re-election office. Cool. Okay. Okay. Why can't? Oh, do I have to pick one? Oh, good. Okay. That's why I couldn't click. So that's a usability affordance there. That was not like I wasn't sure what to do next there. I wasn't sure which button to click. So yeah, that's a kind of a clarity position there. Read this bill and decide which group of people it will help most. Reading? I don't want to read. This is okay.
You can just stamp them with whatever and I'll just say they're all.
Oh, okay. So these are. This says YOUR.
Yeah, and you can click the piece of paper next to it. I like it
Oh.
when it's explore the page first. It just takes some like exploring and understand what to do.
Yeah. I mean, this is almost just like a legislator simulator. Like I get to be. Can I? Oh, it was wrong. That was wrong. I didn't even look at it. So, I mean, okay. Does the stamp you're holding match the type of person who would? Let me read this actually. So, who would like to build the most? Great. So, the bill is struggling businesses, a business fairy program, successful owners have magic wands. They may not be actual fairies. Okay. I mean, okay, so I guess if we're talking about business owners, would that be helping wealthy people more? Is that what I'm supposed to? No. Does it explain why that was wrong?
No.
Because I mean, okay, first class travel.
That's for the will.
Surely that's got to be for wealthy, yeah? So let's see. I got it right. I got 120 points. Great. Get some respect. People between ages of 12 to 18 will have a say in everything. That sounds like a youth vote, right? Yay. Kid-free zones. Well, some kids might want a kid-free zone, but let's do, I guess that's old people, right? Improve the reputation of unfriendly cities. Grumpy city residents will be sent to smiling classes. That sounds creepy. I guess that's an urban issue, but like it's a weird issue. So farmers, something? Okay, sure. I feel like I'm just kind of skimming for keywords. I'm not actually reading these. Design a life program for late teens, sure. Hope for the future. Do-over, yeah, so that sounds like somebody struggling. Something sounds rural to me. How much? Oh, am I almost done? Okay, so easier navigation of crowded. Oh, something about urban. So there we go. Catalog wisdom. Yeah, so that's really an old people thing. Meet your constituent. Man, this is hard. Okay, so this is a lot going on. So in terms of, let me kind of break down a little bit of what I'm saying. Like there's a lot here. Like there's a lot of things to use. So a lot of potential things to either do well in terms of usability or poorly. And I think part of their challenge is just the complexity of the model that they've presented to me here. So navigating that, I was able to figure it out, I think, so far anyway. It looks like there's other game modes that I haven't explored yet, but that's, there's a lot. Notice how the buttons are they light up, and they also, whenever you hover over them, they change states just to show that this is something that can be clicked on. And so my mouse turns from the triangular pointer to a hand with a finger getting ready to touch it, which is a familiar kind of thing to indicate something is a link, and it happens throughout this interface. In terms of, there are a couple of things, I guess, and I don't want to get too wonky with it, but in terms of the platform, this is Flash, and so there are two ways to think of at least two ways to think of what the platform is here. Actually three. So one is that Flash itself is a platform, and so it has certain constraints and affordances. There's things you can do in Flash and things you can't do in Flash. Also, there are game engines built in Flash, so like you would actually use some kind of software or coding language in a game engine that would then like essentially render your game in Flash so that it can be embedded on a website to be played. And then of course this is a embedded object in a web page, and so you have the web as another kind of platform. Again, I could get really wonky with this answer, but Flash as a platform, there is a book series called Platform Studies where people, like scholars of digital studies, like analyze different content platforms for producing content, and Flash is one of the books. There's a book about Flash as a platform. That's one of the things here. And so some of the things like the color palette, the vector graphics, these are inherent to Flash. Like Flash is a vector-based program, and so that's kind of creating the look here. But as far as like creating these buttons, that's probably the game engine or whatever they use to code this. And they may say somewhere in the credits if there is a game engine, or it might just be this particular company's like in-house engine that they use. It's a programming language called ActionScript that you write things in for Flash, so that's probably part of it as well. But I think most of these things, whatever code they were writing it in, most of these things are the responsibility of the creator. Like the things like, so I haven't looked at yours yet, but I imagine you would have a lot to put in the creator column here for this, because this is, like Flash is it's a very flexible platform. Like you can do a lot with Flash. But I think that's the main thing here.
I kind of like saw like the website as the platform.
Okay.
Because I didn't think about Flash.
Okay, that's fine. Well, that is part of it, as I was saying. Like there's multiple layers to it, and so like you can get really like philosophical about what is a platform, really. Like what kind of thing is it? So yeah, there's a leaderboard, like, and achievements. Wow. How many points was I up to? Like 120 or something? So yeah, so I'm close to the leaderboard, maybe? I don't know. This is pretty interesting as a website, just because there's lots of different parts of the civic process that feel game-like, and so it's kind of cool to have games explore that. I don't know about you all, but like over the last like 48 hours, I've had lots and lots of tabs and windows and dashboards and numbers, and it did feel and does feel a lot like a game, like looking at it, and I find that approaching it like a game and thinking of the election like a game has helped my anxiety a little bit, just to kind of play with numbers and fiddle with percentages and stuff. Like that gives me a little bit of an illusion of control over things. So that's been kind of helpful. But it is an illusion, and still have to wait for more information. But it is interesting how incredibly data-rich websites are now about election stuff and different dashboard stuff. It's incredible. And some are better than others, but like, yeah, the one I ended up with, I don't know if I still have it here, but I was thinking actually a lot about usability design for a lot of those dashboards, because many of them will update automatically, and they have a little timer telling you when they're getting ready to update, and I found that helpful. That's a kind of system status thing, letting us know what the status is. But it also just helps them not keeps people from spamming the refresh button on the website, which puts more on the server. This is the main dashboard I ended up using, because it is literally just numbers, and like that, it takes the maps away. It just looks at numbers and trends, and like this was, like I built a spreadsheet that looked a lot like this, and then someone on Twitter pointed this out, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what I've been doing by hand, but here's somebody who's doing it automatically with APIs. Anyway, so yeah, this looks like it's a pretty interesting application of the idea. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, let me give you all one idea, just something to think about as you start pivoting from analyzing the existing artifact and thinking about how to build your artifact with a good sense of usability in terms of all these things. Let me see, I'm going to try to use the whiteboard functionality over here. And let me turn on the dot cam to do this. Yeah, there we go. Let me just slide that down. Okay, so I'm going to give you all, there we go. So I'm going to give you all a metaphor. Hopefully this is more or less lined up. Okay, so I am not a great carpenter. Like I like doing it, but I just mainly like hack together functional things like that catapult. I'm not a finished carpenter. Like that's a whole skill set and a profession that obviously I do not have. But I know a little bit about wood, and one of the things that you learn as you start putting things together is that you have to pay attention to the wood. Like you have to understand the wood that you're working with. And as you probably know, if you've ever looked at a piece of wood, this is let's say this is a 2x4. Wood has grain, right? It has lines. These are, as the tree is growing, these are the tubes that let the tree transfer nutrients and water from the roots to the leaves, right? So this is something that wood has, and it goes in one direction. If you look at it on the side like this, it looks long. We call this direction against the grain. We call this direction with the grain. And if you flip this over on its end and you look at it, it's essentially like you look at just a series of dots, and these are like the open ends of the straws of the tubes that create the tree and give the tree life, right? So one of the things that you learn if you are working with wood is that you have to work with the grain. Like you have to know how to use the grain correctly and effectively. So for example, there's a kind of joint, when you're putting two pieces of wood together, it's called joining. When you join two pieces of wood, there's a particular kind of joint that you might attempt, and it would look like this. So let's say we had another 2x4, we want to stick them together. Putting them together like this is called a butt joint, and it is actually very weak. And it's actually it's not a good joint for a lot of applications. And partly that has to do with, like, if you put a screw through this, the screw doesn't have much to grab onto in terms of the grain. If you put glue here, it's just not a lot of surface area. The glue will get sucked up into the end grain, and it won't actually leave enough on the surface to actually make good contact. So this is a very weak joint. If you do any kind of loading force in this direction, it's just going to snap off. If you do loading in this direction, it's probably going to be fine. And actually, that's how houses are built. Houses would be built like a stud wall would be oriented this way, where the stud would come in from the top. But that's all the weight is coming in that direction. It's not very much shearing force at all on a wall for a house, hopefully, once it's built. So I point this out, and I think the metaphor of wood grain here is helpful as we think about media. Because, and I'm going to give you a slightly technical term here, but I'll actually write it here so you can, well, I need to make sure I can write it where you can see it. The word is affordances. Yeah, that made it all the way in there. And this is, when we talk about, sometimes we might use the word bias in media, and that's a term that sounds like something else. It sounds like I'm talking about like racial prejudice or political bias. It's not what I'm talking about. When I talk about bias in the media, I'm talking about the grain. I'm talking about the way that certain media work well in a certain direction, but not in other directions. They're already predisposed to do certain things, and if you want to do something else with them, you are going to have a harder time. And these are the kinds of things that you're cataloging when you talk about the platform side here. So on the worksheet here, when you look at what you filled in for the platform side, these are really, what you've done is you've created a list of usability affordances that are inherent to the platform, and these are the biases. These are things that you should take advantage of, that you should count on, that are going to be there for you to use. I just noticed this thing is making music. Hopefully it's not on. No, it's not. Yeah, it's muted, I think. So not too bad. Whereas what you're going to be doing, you have, you're going to have the opportunity to create your own media within the, I guess, play space, within the affordances, within the options that are created by the grain of the wood. So this is why I wanted you to do this exercise. I wanted you to understand what you're working with and what the direction of the grain of the wood that you're building your project out of, just to kind of completely hash that metaphor. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully you have been able to observe some of these. As I was saying to Sally, like you can get really wonky with the definition of what a platform is. Like if you're doing a podcast, is the platform Audacity or is it SoundCloud? Like those are two different things, and so they exist for different things. You kind of don't have to. Like ultimately, you want to think about what's left for you to do. Like what are the things that the platform isn't doing for you, and make sure you're doing those things as much as you can. Okay, so I think that's probably all I had to talk about. Oh yeah, one more thing I did want to say to anyone who might be watching this. I know some of you have fallen behind on some of the checkpoints with the big project. Most of you are fine. Some of you are off a little bit. I want to extend, as I have in the past, an invitation, an encouragement that all hope is not lost. Please get in touch with me, and we can figure out a plan. It is still possible to recover from being behind a little bit in the project. But I need to know that you want to do that. I need to know that you're kind of willing to meet me at least halfway on that, so we can get you on board with things. But if you're not sure where you stand or what your odds are or how things are going, please let's have a conversation about it, because otherwise, I don't know what's going on. So, all right, so I will wrap up the streaming part of this, but I will be here and I can chat with some people here in person. If you are online and you would like to have a conversation, best thing is still just to reserve an appointment on my website. But if you can't find a time, or if there's something urgent, I could probably chat for a few minutes today if there's something you want to run by me or talk about after class today. Just let me know. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up the stream. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.